Well, hi there, guys. It's Tony here from Caveman Props, and I'm back today again with another one of my videos for you. My guest today that I'm interviewing, I'm quite excited about. I'm kind of fanboying a little bit because obviously it's something from my younger days that obviously I'm quite into. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today, actress, writer, and voiceover artist. It's Sophie Aldred.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's so nice. I'm glad you're excited.
I am. I obviously grew up when I started getting into Doctor Who was when you was with Sylvester McCoy,
Oh,
and
really?
that kind of got me into Doctor Who. But then obviously I watched with my dad the reruns, and I kind of got into it with John Pertwee. So it was kind of a bit of a mix.
Yeah,
You were the one at the time, but then I loved the older classics as well.
yeah, me too.
Good. Right. So what I'm doing with these videos is to start with, I want to try and get a little bit background information. So basically, I just want to ask of how you got into acting, and
Mm,
then what kind of led up to you getting the role of Ace on Doctor Who.
yes. Well, it was something I think I'd always wanted to do. I can't really remember when it started, but I certainly know that when I was from about the age of 4 or 5, I used to dress up and do plays in the garden with all the neighborhood children. There was also a period, I don't quite know how old I was. I think I was maybe even have been about 3 when I used to be Scott Tracy from Thunderbirds, or maybe a bit older. And my mum made me a little Scott Tracy outfit, and I wouldn't answer to anything but the name Scott. So I was obviously method acting from an early age. And then at school, um, I went to a kind of an all girls day school in London, and just lots of opportunities to do plays and play acting and stuff. And I started to adapt stories that I loved from books, particularly Just William, I remember was one of them, and a section of Alice in Wonderland and all sorts of stuff. And then when I was older, I adapted a PG Wodehouse story and played an unlikely Lord Emsworth, a very sort of very great character, PG Wodehouse character who owned a massive pig. Um, and I just remember loving playing characters and being on stage, showing off, I guess. And then that really led to it was quite an academic school, and they didn't really expect anybody to go to drama school. But I did do some drama school auditions, but I was only 17 when I left school, and they were drama schools, and still do now, always look for people with a little bit of life experience. Um, and I was I had a very sheltered upbringing, so it was quite the right thing for me not to go straight into drama school. And I went to Manchester University instead and did a drama degree, which was very unusual in those days. There were only, I think, 5 courses in universities all over the UK that offered drama as an honours degree. Um, and again, I just continued acting there, loved it. I think when I left, my dad was rather hoping that that was it, but it certainly wasn't. And then eventually, I did a lot of children's theatre, and then I a lot of sort of stuff with singing and music because that's something I loved. And it was whilst I was in a production of Fiddler on the Roof with Topol, who played the part of Tevye in the movie. So lucky to be with him. I was in the back row of the chorus, and I'd got myself an agent by that time. And she put me up for 3 episodes of Doctor Who because they were looking for somebody who could ride a motorbike. And that was one of the things I just did when I was in my early 20s. I had a little Honda 125, a little sort of sports bike I used to tootle around on. And yes, it horrifies me now. I'd never allow my son to have a motorbike. Anyway, And I went down for an audition, and then I had a recall. And to cut a very long story short, I got the part, and then they were also asking if Bonnie Langford, who is the previous companion, as you know, if she was going to leave, then would I be interested in taking over the role of the Doctor Who companion? And there I was in the back row of the chorus in Fiddler on the Roof in Manchester on equity minimum, thinking, gosh, this is one of the most sort of almost like iconic roles on British TV. You bet you I'd like to do that. So there I was, a few weeks later, there I was at the North Acton rehearsal studios, starting to rehearse Doctor Who.
So it was obviously, you were obviously quite excited about it, but was there any kind of like daunting feeling knowing the kind of the history of Doctor Who and that it was quite a popular show? Or was you just really, really excited about it?
I was 24 and I think I just didn't really think about that. I was more excited, and I don't know, I was very confident as well in some ways. I was a little bit shy at the beginning, but Sylvester would laugh to hear me say that now. And any nerves I did have, I very quickly, because it was such a lovely kind of inclusive group of people with Sylvester at the helm. Bonnie was so nice to me and is still a great friend. And people like Tony Selby, who was in the first story, Dragonfire, that I did, and Eddie Peel and Pat Quinn and Tony Asoba. I mean, they were all so welcoming and so kind. And we were having such a laugh that there was no way that I could feel daunted or nervous. And there were plenty of people who were sort of not hand-holding, but there to, I felt that I could always ask for advice and support if I needed it. So yeah, it was exciting. It really was very exciting.
So obviously, yeah, it was quite a good role and working environment to be in at the time then.
Oh, without a doubt, yes. It was a wonderful time. Didn't realise how lucky I was really in those days. We had plenty of rehearsal time to get to know one another and to get to work stuff out, which you don't get nowadays. Although at the time we complained about it because we never seemed to have time enough to do all the things that we wanted to do. But it really was a very supportive working environment, and the BBC as a whole was, I felt, that I was lucky enough to also in that same year get a job in children's presenting, and I spent at least 3 or 4 years pretty much at the BBC most days or weeks of the year doing either Doctor Who or presenting. And I got to know people like the canteen staff and the reception people and the crews, the brilliant crews that were there, the makeup artists, the costume, the visual effects teams. It was a real sense of belonging to a creative organisation that was, I mean, there were complaints, don't get me wrong, but it was everyone was in it together. It was really a wonderful time.
So with the development of the character Ace, did you have any input on that, or was you given a brief on what the character was like?
I went from the script, really. That's my kind of modus operandi. I don't know, it comes off the page. The character comes off the page for me. I did meet Andrew Cartmel was incredibly supportive as well. He was the script editor at the time, and he and I used to talk about young people because, of course, I was a 24, 25-year-old playing a 16-year-old. So, and I didn't really know any 16-year-olds at that time. So it was actually really great to sort of talk about it and to think about what are 16-year-olds into, but I mean, I was cast because I could ride a motorbike. Did I ever get to ride a motorbike? No, I did not get to ride a motorbike. So that shows how much attention they paid to. And every year I'd say, "Oh, can I ride a motorbike in this one?" No, never got to ride a motorbike. Sylvester got to ride a motorbike in the story called Survival, even though he'd never ridden one before, even though he got on the bike they set him off over Horsenden Hill near Perivale and forgot to tell him how to stop the bike. So he got to sort of like a sort of precipitous bit of hill and suddenly went, oh, I don't know how to stop this thing, and managed, luckily, to kind of do a stunt dive off sideways. I mean, can you imagine them doing that nowadays to their lead actor? But, you know, I could have done that. I could have done that. But no.
Yes, you could have. I remember that bike as well, because I was quite into motorbikes myself. And
Oh,
quite strangely, my first motorbike was a little Honda as well.
no. Oh,
Yeah.
how
When you
funny.
said that, I was just like, oh my God,
Oh,
that's so
mine had
spooky.
red, white, and blue decals.
Yeah.
I've still got my leathers in the cupboard.
Obviously, as you mentioned a jacket there, I kind of wanted to bring you on to the point of Ace's jacket, because that's quite an
Yeah.
iconic piece from Doctor Who. What were your first impressions when you saw it? Did you have any input on that, or was it just given to you?
It was entirely my idea. So I don't know why. I took ownership of Ace's costume very early on. I think it was Andrew Cartmel came up to me after the read through and he said, "Oh, I really like the way you look. I think this would be great for Ace." And I was wearing some army cut-off shorts, some stripy, I think some stripy socks or tights. I'm quite into stripes, as you can see. And I was wearing, I think, Doc Martens I was wearing, but shoes and probably a blue and white stripy t-shirt, knowing me. And he said, "I really like that look." And I thought, oh, okay, that means I can choose my costume. So I went and researched. I looked at a couple of pictures in the Face magazine of what sort of trendy 16-year-old girls were wearing in the clubs. And it was all around the time of the Beastie Boys and people, lots of sort of chains with people were nicking badges off cars at the time, you know, the sort of the logos. And we kind of thought that maybe we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't go that far because that would be encouraging theft. But the jacket, I got that idea from two sources actually. One was these photos in the Face magazine with badges and safety pins, and the other was from those flight jackets were really trendy at the time. And when I was in Fiddler on the Roof, I went out to a club with a friend of mine, and we were sitting there, and there was a guy at the bar, and he was wearing this black flight jacket, and I suddenly saw it had a Blue Peter badge on it. And I said to my friend, "Oh, you know, I love Blue Peter. I'd always wanted to be on Blue Peter." And he said, "Well, go and ask him where he got his badge from." And I went over and I said, "Can I ask you something, a really crazy question? Where did you get your Blue Peter badge?" And he said, "Oh, it's a bit of a cheat. I work on the programme." And so we had a little chat and then, you know, didn't think anything more of it. And then I thought, yes, I really like that. I like the Blue Peter badge idea, and I have my two Blue Peter badges, and it kind of all fell together. And then the weirdest thing happened, which is that our first day of filming, you get allocated a dresser as an actor, you know, somebody who's helping you with your costume from the costume department. And Sylvester's dresser turns out to be this guy who I'd met in the bar with the Blue Peter badge. How weird is that?
That is strange.
Yeah,
Kind of a little bit of an influence on it then.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so, yeah, then I went out with a costume designer and I basically said, "Oh, I'll have that and that and that." And he agreed entirely. You know, he was quite happy to go along with it. So I created my costume myself. And after that, I always had a big input. Well, I always did have a big input into all the costumes that I wore.
I just want to ask the question: Do you have any sense of idea of the amount of information there is out there about the jacket itself?
Well, it's so funny. The first I knew of it, you see, because for many years there wasn't the internet, so there wasn't a way of kind of locating this information. And I would occasionally wear it at a convention or be asked to bring it somewhere. But it's really only been in the last few years with the kind of, well, not few years, but and I think the there's a guy in America, Kurt Bergeron, who's been amazing in bringing it to. I remember seeing his initial post with the picture of the jacket, and then he'd put lines to all the badges and found out where you could get them. And then he started actually making the badges because he realized people wanted to buy them. And now, of course, I think also that, as well as the internet, of course, the rise of cosplay and as a thing, because they used to do it a lot in America. That was where it first happened. And one of my first ace costumes that I ever saw was in a costume competition in America somewhere, maybe Chicago, at these incredible Visions conventions they used to have there. Now it's Chicago TARDIS. And we had a costume competition, and this person leapt up onto the stage in an ace costume, complete with the remembrance, the skirt and the leggings and the Doc Martens and the baseball bat. And I thought, wow, she's got better legs than I have. That's not fair. And then it turned out to be a guy. So that was even better. And it's brilliant because it's a kind of unisex costume now. There's many, it's a sort of, it's just anyone can wear it. It's fantastic. And I've seen so many iterations, and then people will sort of riff on their own version. It's brilliant. I'm so proud.
So you're obviously quite pleased with that in the way that it's come out, that it is basically for anyone as well.
Yes, I've seen little babies wearing it. I've seen elderly guys wearing it. Everything.
So obviously going back, you mentioned there the baseball bat. Was that another idea of yours, or was that from the
script? That was from Ben Aronovich's script. But yeah, I mean, I was delighted to. The thing I wasn't so pleased about was the rucksack, because I'd imagined the rucksack, the backpack. It was meant to be. It was actually in the days before bum bags. Can you believe it? I think she would have had a bum bag, probably. Mind you, that would have been hard to get that ladder in Curse of Fenric, and the baseball bat. But the backpack I thought would be a sort of small, like we know now backpacks to be, but they weren't around in those days, really. I think I'd seen people wearing them, and I thought, oh, they're really cool. Ace would wear them. But I didn't explain myself properly. So we got to the set, and there's this massive camping rucksack, so that turned out to be what I wore. And then they would fill it with sort of light padding sometimes. And then obviously the baseball bat went in there. But I didn't half end up carrying a lot of stuff at times.
Okay, because one of the questions I want to ask is obviously that certain items, especially from Ace's character, have become quite iconic. Did you ever watch the spin-off series of Class?
Yes, I did. I watched a couple of episodes, but I have to admit, I'm such a wuss. I don't like blood and gore. So, yes, I didn't watch too much of it, but I did watch it. And then what was brilliant was that I was asked to do the Big Finish class. And one of the stories, they married up an episode of Class with Remembrance of the Daleks. And, because the guy had a baseball bat, didn't he?
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be based on the same. That was never mentioned, but as soon as he came out with it, there was like a load of us that went, "Hold on, that looks exactly like."
Yeah. Yes, I think it was a little, hey, here you are, fans.
Cool. Okay, I want to move on from that for a moment. Obviously, you've also do quite a lot of work in voiceovers and characters. Obviously, it's sort of come to it. My kids have obviously started getting into Doctor Who as well, so they kind of know who you are. But then when I sort of turned around and sort of said, "That's also the voice of Trifu Tom," it literally almost like blew their minds a little bit. How did that sort of work come around?
Well, I've always loved doing voices, and accents. My brother and I, when we were young, we used to play a game with our sort of dolls and teddies, and we used to give them voices, and we'd make, they'd speak in different accents and characters. And then also I was fascinated by Radio 4. I used to listen to a program called All Gas and Gators with Derek Nimmo was a favourite voice of mine, and then Kenneth Williams, of course, on Just a Minute, and then Clement Freud as well. I thought he had a very interesting, and I don't know, my ear, I was always caught with an interesting voice or an accent, and I sing as well, and I don't know whether that helps pick up voices and accents. And I'm not an impressionist by any means, but I do like to get a sort of character. I can get a character. Like sometimes my husband will say, oh, what does that duck sound like? Oh, I know another influence was Johnny Morris on a program called Animal Magic, which was absolutely lovely. And it was based at Bristol Zoo, and it was just, as far as I remember the theme tune, I think. Anyway, look it up. It's probably on YouTube. And it was, as far as I remember, just footage of animals, and Johnny Morris would voice them. And I was so interested in that. Anyway, I got into it, I think probably when I was doing children's TV, and I did a lot of characters in a program called Corners, and then people have started asking me to do voiceovers. Friend of mine got a message, who was a director there. They were looking for they got a memo one day saying, does anybody know an actress who could play a baby Mexican gerbil? And they went, and he or she went, Sophie Aldred. Said yes, absolutely. It was like, I don't know, baby Mexican. Anyway, it was for an educational maths program called El Nombre, which I did for many years. And it just went like that, really. And people would give me more work in voiceovers. And then I got myself a voiceover agent, Sue Terry, who I've been with really a long, long time. I had another voice agent to begin with, I think. But then I was with Sue, and I'm still with her. And it just went from there. And then I started doing, I've always loved reading out loud. So I do audiobooks. In fact, I just finished another one this week. I've been recording in lockdown in our airing cupboard. Our airing cupboard has very good tone, apparently. It's all those towels and sheets. So I've been, luckily, I mean, I'm so fortunate to have the voiceovers, because I've been able to carry on during lockdown. So that's how it came about, really.
Brilliant. So with that kind of work, you've been able to obviously work during the lockdown. It's not kind of impeded any problems there.
Well, work has, it's not been as plentiful, shall we say, but yes, I have been lucky enough, unlike many, many, many of my colleagues, to be able to do big Finnish audios and audio books, and some English language work and various projects. So that's extraordinary. And some of the studios, there's some great studios around London as well that I love going to, and they're so hot on their safety and their COVID restrictions. As the Sound House in North Acton, actually, which is just around the corner from where we used to rehearse for Doctor Who. Of course, voiceover work lends itself to being isolated, because you're isolated in a booth anyway. So thank goodness. But many of my colleagues have not been so fortunate, and yes, it's a very difficult time for the business.
Okay, I want to try and bring it back. Obviously, before the lockdown and everything happened, you did actually return kind of to the Doctor Who universe, but obviously not as Ace, because you was in the real-time productions of Seal and the Devil Seeds. How was that to return to that kind of it was technically in the same universe, but as a completely different character.
I loved it. Well, as I said, I love character work anyway. Well, I love any work. And yes, and Keith, who I've known for years, he's a Doctor Who fan originally. He was one of the founders of the Doctor Who Appreciation Society back in the day. And Keith has worked tirelessly over the years for fandom. He is behind the Mythmakers series of interviews with lots and lots and lots of the Doctor Who family. And he started to branch out into original drama years ago. I did a series of dramas with him. And yeah, he just rang me and said, would I be interested? There was another project actually, which he will eventually get round to doing. But then he kind of thought, no, that's a bit too much for now. I'm going to do this Syl story. And said he knew it was a bit of a cheek because it was a small part, but would I like to play an alien and with prosthetics? And I've always wondered what it was like for those people who had to be enclosed in rubber or latex or whatever. And so I jumped at the chance actually. And again, we had a very enjoyable time filming. I helped him cast my friend Shakuntala, who was in Survival with me all those years ago, and also the amazing Janet Henfrey, who she was in The Curse of Fenric, but also she was at school with my mum, which was amazing. And it was lovely to be working with them. And it was a really lovely few days. Nabil, just unbelievable. He plays Syl, reprises his role from the Colin Baker era. I mean, the amount of lines the guy had, I don't know how he did it. And also, he was incredibly uncomfortable and very hot in the costume. He couldn't get out very easily. I was lucky. I only had the prosthetics on my head and quite a loose flowing costume, really. But he was a trooper, unbelievable. And I'm so glad it's won tons of awards, and I'm so glad for Nabil. He's won loads of them. But it was a great. Yeah. It was done on a shoestring. The designer he did the costumes and the sets. Genius stuff. He used very little and made a lot of it. All the crew were lovely, lovely people. It was a really, really nice job.
So I was saying, obviously quite enjoyable to come back. It was almost like the family atmosphere you had from when you was originally in Doctor
Who. Definitely.
Sounds like you've really enjoyed it. The last thing, obviously, I want to bring up with you, obviously, you kind of ventured back into Doctor Who again, this time with a book. Asian. I kind of want to know how this, the idea of this story came about. Is it an idea that you had, or had the BBC approached you about writing a book?
Well, actually, yeah, it was completely out of the blue. Steve Cole, who's one of the collaborators on the book, he emailed me and said, was I interested in talking about something? So he gave me a ring and explained that Penguin Random House had published Tom Baker's Scratchman novel a couple of years ago, and it had done incredibly well. And was I interested because I was next, type thing? I was incredibly flattered and said, well, yeah, what would it entail? And he said, well, he and Mike Tucker, who I'd known from years ago from working on the series, he was in visual effects, but who's a very talented writer and has written a lot for Doctor Who, some of which I've read on audiobook, actually. He and I wrote a book. Well, I think it's about 5 years after the series. Oh, I've got it here, actually, right here, because my little Doctor Who bookcase is here. Is it here? Yes, it is. Yeah, we wrote, look at that, we wrote this book.
I have that.
Oh, do you have that one?
Yes.
Yeah, and I loved writing that because it was a bit like a memoir, a scrapbook. It's got lots of photos in, but I'd never written a novel. And I said, well, do you think I can? And I used to do a bit of writing, and they said, well, yeah, we'll, it's a collaborate. We'll collaborate on it. And we all met up, the three of us, and we kind of brainstormed ideas. And I had just been filming on the Blu-ray trailer, the season 26 Blu-ray trailer. And I absolutely loved Dorothy as she was in that. We had the most fantastic time filming it. Very emotional coming back after all that time. So in my head, I had exactly who Ace is now, who Dorothy is. And I said, okay, so she's going to have the same, she'll have this penthouse overlooking Tower Bridge. She's going to have it. And we talked about the car then, and the sort of idea of the kind of the bat cave that she has, and this sort of idea of having like a butler type, and then I can't remember where Squidget came from, but that came up. So we talked, and then we batted ideas back and forth, came up with a synopsis, a short synopsis, and then a long one, and then fleshed out the bones on it. But it was a truly collaborative process, and I'm delighted it's gone down so well. And I really wanted to get as much as possible explained about Ace in the book. So, for example, lots of the questions that fans always ask me at conventions or interviews, like, how come Ace has had so many different timelines in a way? How come in Big Finish she's doing that, in the comics she's doing that, in the New Adventures she's doing that, so it kind of explained that. And then, of course, we wanted to introduce, well, because it's a 13th Doctor story, ostensibly. I mean, it's quite extraordinary how they allowed us to have so much of the book before the 13th Doctor appears. But I knew that would be a really pivotal, important moment for fans. And I wanted to get as much in as possible of, for example, why doesn't Ace have a Perivale accent, sort of West London's being born on a council estate accent? Why does she support Charlton Athletic and not, say, Queen's Park Rangers, which she probably would if she just things like that. And the Doctor just kind of sorts it all out straight away in that scene. So yeah, loads of influences there, and also the going back to Perivale from Survival and meeting up with Squeak again, and so lots. It was all there, really.
Yeah, it was the thing. It was one of the big unanswered questions of what really happened to Ace after the TV series had finished. So this is kind of your idea of setting the story correct in the image that you wanted, where you'd want Ace to be.
Yeah, I'm so lucky.
So the final question is going to be, what's next? Is there going to be another book, or is there any other projects in the pipeline that you're allowed to talk about?
There's nothing at the moment. I think the lockdown in a way has kind of changed many things, as we know. And I would absolutely love to do some kind of spin-off, or but hey, even going back to conventions right now would be great, wouldn't it, to be able to meet up in person like we used to do. So in a way, that's what I'm kind of focused on, really, is kind of making sure everyone's okay, really. There's a lot of fans who maybe haven't had the greatest lockdown, who may be living on their own, or who haven't, who've not had a chance to get out very much, and the conventions stopping has been a huge blow to them, because that's where their social life is, that's where they feel comfortable, that's where they can cosplay, whatever. So I can't wait for those to be back again, really, for the fans.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm quite looking forward to getting back to it. It's just been too long.
Yeah.
All right. With that, I want to just say thank you, Sophie, for talking to me this evening. It's been a real pleasure just to get some background information and to find out a little bit more about you and obviously your feelings over the character of Ace. It's quite important to quite a few many people, I feel.
Well, thank you. It's lovely to have the opportunity to talk about it. So thank you very much.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, well, there you go, guys. Thanks for watching this video. Please like, please subscribe, and I will catch up with you in the next video very soon.